Hi everyone, Kelly here, and today I want to share with you my most recent reads. I've been a little slacking off the last week in terms of recording videos, just a lot of stuff going on, and I'm just getting a lot of reading done. So I have 7 books to share with you, and this video actually gets me kind of caught up. I know if you watched my December TBR, my last recent reads, I was saying how I really wanted to spend the first half of December catching up on all these books that I kind of half read or started like months ago and put down for a long time. And after this one, I only have one more book that I started several months ago, and that's the Sherlock Holmes adventures. So it's the first short story collection, and I'm actually already 60% of the way through. So that makes me really happy that after this, like basically I finished one of these books today, and all the ones I'm reading now are ones that I have started like this week. So that makes me feel good that like I don't have to catch up. There are, if you happen to see on my Goodreads, there are a couple like The Stand that I started, but I can't finish it because I have to wait for the audiobook to come back out because it's like a 47-hour audiobook. So I didn't get it done in the 3 weeks they gave me to listen to it. So now I had to wait 10 more weeks before I get it back. But luckily I was at like the end of one whole section, so it'll just feel like I'm reading it like a series instead of like a giant 1,500 page book. So anyways, let's get to the books I want to talk about. But see, the thing is, because I am finishing up a lot of books that I had put down, I'm finding I am reading a lot of 2 and 3 star books that I just don't really love because there's a reason I put them down. So actually the first few I'm talking about, I just didn't love them. None of these were 2 star, which was good. There's a couple 3 star and then one, I'm putting it as 4 star, more as the end of the series. But like, they're not books that I'm going to be returning to or be really super excited about necessarily. So that's the only sad thing about finishing up a lot of books I'm halfway in between, is that there's a reason I put them down, that they just weren't capturing my attention. But maybe they would be books that you would like more. So I'll tell you the things I liked and didn't like about them. Then the first 2 books I want to talk about are books that were in my video I did like a month ago about books I had accidentally DNF'd, and you were supposed to vote for the one you wanted me to continue. And out of the 5 books I talked about in that video, I've actually finished 4 of them. I reviewed 2 a couple weeks ago, and then I have the other 2, and included in that is the one you voted for. So I did get to it, and that was my goal, was to get to it by the end of the year. So let's start with the one I liked less. We're gonna go in the order of one I liked the least to the one I liked the best. And that is starting with Where'd You Go, Bernadette by Maria Semple. I did give this 3 stars, but it's kind of a generous 3 stars. It might have been more of a 2.5, but I understand why people like this, so I think it deserves, like, from a literary standpoint, I just think it deserves a 3 star, but maybe it wasn't a full 3 star enjoyment for me. So this story is about a woman named Bernadette, who is a mother of a girl who, I think she's in middle school, her daughter B. Yeah, I think she's like graduating from middle school in this book, and kind of like her award for graduating middle school with perfect scores or whatever is that she gets to ask for her parents for whatever she wants. And she asked them to go on a trip to Antarctica because she's been learning about it in school and finds it really interesting. The problem is that Bernadette, the mother, is not somebody that likes to leave the house. She has a lot of social anxiety and like some, she's kind of on the verge of a breakdown and all this. There's a lot happening in her life other than her daughter's request to go on this trip. And it even says it on the back that, Bernadette gets to the point where she disappears and B is looking for her. And yes, we know that at the beginning because her daughter B is, this whole book is a compilation of all these like letters and emails and all that stuff that B put together in order to find her mother. But we don't really see the mother disappear till towards the end. So it doesn't really feel like, it almost feels like a spoiler, even though we know from the beginning, but it's just the way it's formatted. It's a bit weird. And I think that's part of why I didn't love this book, is the way it's formatted. It is epistolary for most of it. Like 3/4 of the book is like letters, emails, things like that. And so we're kind of learning about what happened in Bernadette's life leading up to the disappearance. And I didn't mind the letter portion, but actually it was the last like section where it stops being letters. I can't remember where that started. I think it was pretty much like the last 1/4 of the book stopped being letters and started to just be current time following B. And I just didn't find any of that compelling anymore. It's like we were building this whole thing with the letters and all that, and then once it got to a regular prose, I just found it kind of boring and hard to finish. And I know that this is a satire, but I just didn't find it funny. Like, I found it ridiculous. Like, satire is supposed to be kind of ridiculous and humorous and off the wall, and I did find the stories of the things that Bernadette was doing to be really off the wall and ridiculous, but I just didn't find it humorous to me. So that's why I'm giving this a 3 stars instead of a 2, because I do think that this will, a lot of people will find this humorous and will connect to like the humor more. It just didn't work for me in terms of satire, so that's why it was only 2 stars, and why it probably took me a while to push through this. I think I started this over a year ago, but I'm glad that I finally finished it and get it out of the way. I will also say that I picked this book up at the beginning just because the name Bernadette is in the title, and if you didn't know, my oldest daughter is named Bernadette. I love the name Bernadette, and I did like appreciate reading a book that has her name, because there aren't a lot of books with Bernadettes in them. So that's 1 plus for that one. So yes, it didn't really work for me, but I understand why other people like it. And then the next one, which is the book that you actually voted for me to finish, was My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Fredrik Backman. I also gave this one 3 stars. I had read halfway through this book, I think back in March, and then I put it down because it just wasn't really getting into the storytelling. And then I just kind of made myself pick it up by audiobook this week and finished it pretty quickly. I still would not say that I love this book, but this is my first Fredrik Backman, and I'm getting from this why people love him. Like, some of his writing, some of the like sentences that were in this really stuck with me, so I could see why people enjoy his writing, and I want to read more by him, because maybe it was just this story didn't connect with me. I read in a lot of reviews that people that love Backman, this might be one of their least favorite, because it's just different than the other ones, because it has a little bit of almost like a magical fairy tale story in it. So this is about a girl named Elsa, and her best friend is her grandmother, and then towards the beginning of the book, her grandmother dies. I wouldn't say this is a spoiler because it's written on the back, on the summary, and it happens very soon in the book. And when she dies, her grandmother leaves her all these letters that she is supposed to give to people that her and her grandmother knew, apologizing to them for the things she's done. And it kind of weaves together this whole story of the grandmother's backstory and how she connects to all these people in Elsa's life that Elsa didn't really know the story behind, because she's pretty young. I think she's only like 7. And it also weaves in a lot of the make-believe world that her grandmother had been telling her stories from. They have this world called Miamis, and the land of Almost Awake, and her grandmother shared a lot of, bedtime stories about this kingdom with Elsa. So there's a lot of that too. And I think that that's what made me put this down, was like this whole combination of this like fairy tale magical thing mixed with the real world, and it was confusing me, and I just wasn't really like connecting to it. And the second half, it is much more about the grandmother's backstory and her connection with these other people in their lives and how that all weaves together. And I liked the way the ending really like saved it. It was gonna be a 2-star, I think, if I was going by what I had originally read, but the second half really kind of brought it up for me, because all the way people connected and the things that Elsa was learning about her grandmother and all that just really was interesting to see all the connections. And I thought that the ending was really great. And just kind of the things you get from the story at the end were worthwhile. So I'm glad I finished it, because I do think the second half was better for me, but ultimately it doesn't make up for the fact that I had to really trudge through the first half, so I'm still gonna give it 3 stars. But I am interested in continuing to read Fredrik Backman. I really wanna read Beartown, and I own A Man Called Ove, and so I do wanna continue reading his books, and I can see why people like his writing style. So now the next one is the last of the books that I just really need to catch up on, and that was The Winter's Curse by Marie Rutkoski. This is the last book in a trilogy called The Winter's Trilogy. I had started this trilogy at the beginning of the year, and I have been reading this book, I think, for like 2 or 3 months. I really loved the first book, and I think I gave it like a 4.5 stars, and then the second book was almost on the other side. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars, but it felt more like a 2.5, like it was really long and drawn out. And this one, I gave it 4 stars, but like I said at the beginning of I don't know if you understood what I was saying at the beginning of this video, that this was a very like low 4 stars. Like the reason I gave it 4 instead of 3 or 3.5 was that I think it worked really well as an ending to the trilogy, but as a standalone book, it probably was more of a 3.5 in terms of enjoyment. But I think it does really wrap up the story well, and wraps up the arc of the characters really well. I appreciate this trilogy as a whole, but I don't think this is what I'm going to revisit, and this book itself dragged a lot for me, but then picked up at the end. So that was a long way of saying it's a low 4 stars, good ending to the trilogy. And next I read Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This book has been everywhere over, I don't know how long it's been out, like at least a half a year, and everybody's been loving it. I think it got like the Goodreads Romance Award and the Debut Author Award, I believe. So everybody loves this. If you look at the Goodreads ratings, it's like 5 stars all across. Well, I didn't give it 5 stars. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It just wasn't necessarily exactly my genre. And that was the problem. I think it's a good book, and I understand why everybody loves it. It just didn't necessarily connect with me to the level of everybody else. I don't think it actually felt like a 3-star book for me for about half of it, and then after the halfway point, I started really enjoying it more. The first half I didn't really love, and I think the reason is not anything to do with the book. It is just my preference in romance books. I prefer romance books that are like not really reliant on the sex scenes to bring the characters together, that like the characters are more developing like heart-to-heart talks and just like having these really like cute or funny interactions, if you know, like more like a romantic comedy. And this book, the first whole half really relies on the sex scenes to drive the relationship, and we don't get a lot of like the emotion behind it until later. So it's kind of like they're starting out with an attraction, you know, all that, and then about the halfway point is when I feel like there's more feelings coming up, and then I started to enjoy it more. And that's just a personal preference. I have no problem with sex scenes in a book. It's just that when that is used to build a relationship, I just don't find it as interesting. I just would rather have that conversation or those cute little moments. And I guess I never said what it's about, but it's so popular, I figure people know. It's a romance between the first son, so the president's son of the United States, and then a prince of England, obviously a fictional of both. And it takes place like after Obama is president, but obviously it's a female Democrat that becomes president after Obama in this world. And so a romance between those two men. And yeah, that's the main reason why I just didn't love it. It's just I didn't like the way the romance developed, in my opinion. But the second half was really good. There was a lot more emotional. There was a lot of the political stuff going on with the president's son. And I like it when a romance book has like a plot as well. And I think that there was a lot going on in both his life and in his mother's presidency and all that stuff that kind of like made it more interesting. Another reason why I think people love this book, because it does have a lot to the plot and just has a lot of substance. Yeah, so 4 stars. I thought it was good. I understand why people love it. It just wasn't necessarily 5 stars for me just because of the way the romance developed. I guess I'm just on the more side of like using the sex scenes more sparingly in order for them to have a bigger impact. But that's just me. Next, I listened to The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. This is my 3rd Ruth Ware book. I started off with her very first one, didn't like it. I think I gave it 1 or 2 stars. Then last month I read, or earlier this month, I don't remember which one. Recently I read The Turn of the Key and gave it 4 stars, I believe, and really enjoyed that until like the ending. I love the ambiance, and this one was very similar. I would say this one and Turn the Key are kind of tied for me. I also gave this one 4 stars. I thought the ambiance of this house and everything was amazing. This is a book about a woman named Hal who gets a letter in the mail saying that she's inherited something from her grandmother, and she's like, this isn't my grandmother, but it has her name on it and her address, so she decides to go and see if she can con these people into believing that she is the Harriet Westaway that they think she is, and give her the money so that she can, like, because she doesn't have a lot of money and she owes somebody some money. And then there's just like what all happens, drama with family and this big old house that this woman is leaving to her family and all that. And yeah, the ambiance of the house is great. The family dynamics were great. I really enjoyed the way this book developed. I enjoyed the ending too. Like, I liked it all the way. I just didn't think it was like spectacular because it was very predictable. Like, all of the reveals along the way I predicted, but I was enjoying myself, so it didn't necessarily matter that I wasn't surprised. So it was a solid 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. I think, yeah, those two, her most recent books, are tied for me of being just really enjoyable in terms of ambiance. So if you like a thriller that doesn't necessarily have a lot of big surprises, but that like will just have really great ambiance and family dynamics, I would suggest both of those. They were fun reads. And I have noticed that I have been babbling a lot, so I'm gonna end off with 2 books that are a second and third in a series, so I probably won't talk about them very much. And they are the second and third books in the Keeper of the Lost Cities series. And I gave Exile book 2 4 stars and Everblaze book 3 5 stars. And this is a series about a girl named Sophie. At the beginning of the series, she's 12 years old. She knows there's something strange about her, but she thinks that she's just like a weird kid living a normal life. But then a boy appears and tells her that she is not a normal kid, that her kind of weird things about her make her special. And she goes to this kind of, not necessarily magical school, but this school where she learns about the things that are different about herself. She learns like all this about her past and stuff like that. And it's kind of magical in the way of like powers, and it's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of characters. I enjoyed the first one immensely. I gave it 5 stars. I started the second book, and this one was just kind of a slow read. The first half was just kind of trudging along, and the second half was really high speed. So I did end up enjoying it a lot, but just didn't love it to the point of the first book. And also, Sophie's character really annoyed me in this book. And this one, she just doesn't trust anybody. And I understand, like, she's getting used to a whole new bunch of people, a whole new world, new abilities, everything. But like, there's people that have sworn to protect her, like family, friends that have been like, we are here for you no matter what. And she refuses to talk to them and trust them. And because of that, pretty much everything that happens in this book happens because of her not like talking to people. And I just kind of hate that trope, you know, of like not talking. And so that's why I gave this one a little less, but I still think it was good. And this one was 5 stars, amazing. I might have even liked this better than the first book because now we're getting attached to some of these characters. And she showed me in this one that there are going to be stakes in this series, because I don't like it when a series is set up where there is a lot of life and death situations, but nothing bad ever happens. Like, everything turns out okay all the time. And this one showed that there are like consequences and like stuff like that. And so I thought this book was amazing, and I'm liking the way the series is going. So I will definitely be continuing the series in January, and really excited. I think this is a really great series. It's middle grade, so if you are somebody that enjoys like middle grade fantasy, kind of more epic middle grade fantasy, that's what I would call this. You know, it's not like epic to the point of like adult series, but I do think there's a lot of characters, a lot of stuff going on. Really great series. And that's it. Those are all the books I want to talk about. I have a feeling I won't be doing another recent reads until January. I might just do kind of like a wrap up for the second half of December, because I have a lot of videos coming up very soon that kind of wrap up the year and all that. And you will be seeing that from me very shortly. Talk to you next time. Bye.